Hi, Doug.
Hello.
Donna's online.
I did my part at the liquor store for inclusivity. I bought Bud Light.
Well,
I'm gonna need to know how that connects.
Yeah.
And the minutes.
Yeah.
We haven't
We
officially.
haven't started the
officially
meeting yet,
started
so
the
we're.
meeting.
Keep that one
Yeah,
up to have.
so,
That's because we're not quite.
yeah,
getting close.
1, 2.
yeah, we still got,
We have 7 with the alternate. Yeah. I didn't have any. Miguel's not coming because he's got Chiefs citizen group.
Yep.
Fugio's got
he's there.
dialysis tonight.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he's still.
Jillian was gonna do online.
Hmm.
Have you heard from Michelle?
No.
Okay.
All right.
Let me see if I can pull up who else was gonna be here.
I'll give it another 2 minutes.
Yeah.
That's 11. Is that our current count? Is 11? Is there somebody else I'm forgetting?
I wrote this down one time.
Our number to our board keeps in flux, so we're trying to whittle it down to we were up to what, 15, I think, at one point, so we.
Mhm.
I think it was 13.
13 and 2
yeah,
alternates,
Alternates,
right?
yeah. So,
Gosh, this was old.
Grab a seat, we'll get the meeting started soon.
there.
Hi.
Well. I have a 12. Is that what you have, Seth?
I have 11.
Maybe 6.
Who's on your list?
I'm gonna look and find a more current list. Don't worry. It's fine. I thought I wrote myself a note so I would just have it at my fingertips next time. Like clearly I did not do that.
Right with the other note.
Yeah,
That's how it works for me.
totally is. Not in the electronic
Write
file
it
where I
down so
put
I don't
it.
forget, and I
Yeah.
forget where the note is.
Uh-huh. Right in here and I would just have to flip through and be. No, this one's super outdated. We'll reconcile, Seth.
Okay.
I'll hang out for a few minutes afterwards. Compare lists.
All right, did we start the recording?
It is started.
Okay. It is 6:03, so we would like to call this meeting of the Westminster Inclusivity Board and our friends at the Human Resource Board to order. So even though this isn't a board for you, you're guests for us. So thank you very much for being here. And we'll look at this a little bit more as a collaborative, just kind of discussion and conversation, at least for that business. So we usually, in the past, we've tried to do some team builders to where we just kind of get to know each other and things. But since I think not everyone knows each other in the room, I think a team builder would be just introduce yourself and talk about one thing that you're inspired by in your work with the city. Maybe just one little soundbite, something that you love. So we'll just start. And I'll start on the screens this time. I see Michael. Michael, would you be willing to go first? And
yeah, of course. Michael Parlow, Policy and Budget Coordinator. Been working for the city for about 3.5 years now. I am coming back as the staff liaison for Human Services Board. Kit is moving back to the East Coast. We're sad to see him go, but happy, or hopefully he's going to an exciting adventure over there. So, but of course, sad to see him go. Yeah, no, I mean, I love working for the City of Westminster, and the Human Services Board has been, in the time that I've served with them, has been really fantastic, and a great group of people who want to do right by the city, the most vulnerable populations, and help them. So yeah, no, excited to hear what the Inclusivity Board has to say. Oh, I will admit Donna back.
Thank you, Michael. Doug, please.
Hi, everybody. I'm Doug Pfeiffer. Been a member of the Inclusivity Board for a number of years. And I guess I'm just really excited to see the board getting some wheels on the street and seeing really start to have an impact in doing things and being sought out by people. I think that's just great to see, and I'm loving that.
Thanks, Doug. Donna.
Hi, am I muted here? I can't tell what's going
I
on.
hear you fine.
We can hear you. Yeah.
And I just got on, so what are we doing here?
We're just, since we have guests here tonight from another board, we're just introducing ourselves and talking a little bit about like maybe a soundbite, a little quick statement about what inspires you in your work with the city.
Oh, well, I'm Donna Johnson. I was an original member of this board for a lot of reasons. I bring a viewpoint, obviously, of the seniors, which are also very much a part of, should be a part of any inclusivity situation. And currently serving on a sustainability committee at our community here. I'm at Covenant Living of Colorado. And so there are many things that we collaborate with the city to do with that. And we're just kind of getting off the ground. So we'll be working probably more with the city than we have in the past. But I'm kind of echoing what Doug said. I'm glad to see us as a board now kind of beginning to stretch our wings a little bit and beginning to branch out and hopefully be effective.
Thanks, Donna. All right, Jake, thank you. Jake is our administrative everything, does behind the scenes stuff. So we appreciate you. I don't know if he's actually listening in or not, but
He's down at the door.
oh, he's probably
Yeah.
down at the door. So he's keeping the recording flowing. So he does his magic. Well, Kathy, do you want to start? And we'll just kind of go around the,
Sure.
yeah.
My name's Kathy Busby. I have lived in the city of Westminster for 45 years, raised my family here. And my first, I guess, formal interaction with the city was through the Civic Academy, which was an awesome experience. Would recommend it to anyone who has the time to be able to participate. I joined the Human Services Board last year. And I think what I've found most interesting or most inspiring about the Human Services Board is reading the grant applications and learning of all of the amazing nonprofits there are in our community serving the residents of Westminster.
I'm Katie Ruski. I've been on the Human Services Board for maybe 5 or 6 years, I think. They let me be the chair. I'm not sure why. So I get to do that. And I lived in Westminster quite some time. In my day job, I work in the state of Colorado as a director of services. So this was like a natural fit for me. And I have a social work background, so I enjoy just seeing the nonprofits and really appreciate that Westminster sets aside some money for nonprofits to do their work and to support them.
I'm Steve Brockman. I'm probably the newest member of our board, approaching my 1-year anniversary. So I'm just in this phase of my experience with the board, learning quite a bit about what the various city departments do and who's who. Man, what a spring. All our open space is just a bloom with flowers. So that's been a real treat.
Cody Blue Ribbon, I'm the staff liaison to the Inclusivity Board, off and on for the last 7 or so years. So here to do what I do with you guys, support you, help you find the ways.
Yeah, I noticed that her accommodation was not nearly as glowing as yours, Michael, so. Yeah, see, yeah, no, I'm just saying, we're a hard group.
I'm just still trying to find the attendance. Oh, then we made us smaller and then now I can't count. Still 12.
I'm missing somebody.
I'm Michelle Zajic, and I have been on the Inclusivity Board almost as long as you have, right?
Only 6 years?
Yeah, 6 years or something.
Mhm.
That's weird. It doesn't feel that long.
Yeah.
I actually joined the board just because, well, first off, it's easy to get involved in Westminster. You know, like activities. I moved from a big city to Westminster. And then when I found out how easy it was to actually get involved in your community, I was like, heck yeah. And Inclusivity Board specifically was interesting to me because I am first generation. So I have parents whose first language is not English, who have different cultural backgrounds. And I realized that where I grew up, didn't have any real community services at all. And so it was very tough for them to you know, kind of assimilate is a bad word, but, you know, sort of fit into this very, very small community. And I realized big communities have problems too, in that these people will get lost, you know, in some cases, folks that don't necessarily always sit in the spotlight or always have that microphone. So I wanted to join the board to see what we could do to, you know, make the city more accessible. Accessibility is inclusivity, isn't it? So, so that's the reason why I wanted to be on the board. So I'm now the vice chair.
My name is Justin. I have been on the board since its inception in 2016. I currently serve as the chair. I keep on trying to run away from that role and no one has jumped in. Michelle, I think, is getting ready, but.
Oh, no, you're gonna hold that as long as you're here.
Yeah.
We have a plan.
So one of the things that inspired me, I both live and work in the city. I work in Westminster Public Schools. And one of the things that inspired me was parents were afraid to come to discuss the resources and things because they, you know, a lot of our parents had issue and challenge with coming to official buildings of authority and realizing that there was a voice that wasn't being heard. You know, that there was some fear there. And so I was presented with the opportunity to come together and I'm like, well, I definitely am connected to this community of my parents and my families. And I definitely want to do my part to advocate in whatever way I can for them and for the children in our district and in our community. So it's one of the reasons I'm here. So I continue to be inspired by all of the great work that's being done. So thank you for being here.
Hi, I'm Christine with the Human Services Board, and I've been on, I think, since December of 2020. And I'm inspired by being a part of the Human Services Board and getting to read applications and learn more about the nonprofits in Westminster. I work for a nonprofit out of Denver that touches on Westminster as well. No conflict of interest with anybody who's applied. I'm also inspired to know that the city of Westminster has an inclusivity board, and I'm very excited to see how it will progress DEI initiatives in our city, which I think are greatly needed. And I'm just happy to be here.
So my name's Rich Chamberlain, and I was with Donna sort of at the inception of the task force that was tasked with determining whether or not we need an inclusivity board. And we determined, yes, we do, and still do. And it's, excuse me, it's, I guess what keeps me going is knowing that in spite of the fact that we still fall short, to have some small impact on making this a more welcoming community and really the understanding that you can't really have the unity part of community without recognizing the strength of diversity.
Absolutely.
Alan Farb, I'm the second newest member of this board. And considered an alternate still, correct? Until the numbers drop. And Rich pretty much said it all on that. Just me personally, I joined here because I'm deeply involved with the homeless community here and advocating for all those people. I just got back today from, I made contact with about 45 different individuals today, and most of them in the city. And people are asking for help. So hopefully here we'll, we want to be inclusive, and they are residents of the city. So, thank you.
I'm Seth McGinnis. I've been here as long as Justin has been. I'm the secretary, and there's a couple minoritized elements to my identity, but mostly I don't have any specific inspiration. I'm enthused about promoting DEI and social justice issues, and this is a way I can do that. Can I get your names' spellings real quick so I can spell them correctly in the minutes?
Sure. Kathy with a K.
Okay.
And Busby is BSBY.
Okay.
Katie with a K and then IE and RUSKE for my last name.
Okay. And Christine?
Christine with CHR.
I guessed all of them
My
wrong.
last name is, there's so many spellings. Last name is Geertz. That's GEERTS.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you all. And thank you, members of the Human Services Board, for being here. We definitely feel early on, I think in our work, we felt a little bit like we were in somewhat of a silo. We definitely connected and made sure that we were giving advice and recommendations to our council. But we soon realized that nothing is untouched by matters of inclusivity and diversity. Like our city is in fact a diverse place. And so what we really began doing is we began doing a lot of outreach and a lot of, well, how can we become a board of resources? How can we not only help the outward facing community, but how can we also help our inward facing organization to really address the fact that sometimes inclusivity can be weaponized and can be misunderstood because it is a little bit of a polarizing term in some circles, and also making sure that we can move forward in a way that it is an advocacy group. And so, we've definitely had, I think, a lot of different initiatives, a lot of great thinking around what we would like to do. And now these partnerships that hopefully we begin to forge tonight, not that we haven't been partners, but we really started thinking about what are the steps, what are actionable steps that we can take to not only help your work, but also to support the great effort that you and your board are doing. And I see Jillian. Jillian, you jumped in. Welcome. It's good to see you. We all introduced ourselves. If you just want to quickly introduce yourselves, we have our guests from our Human Services Boards tonight. And just kind of talk a little bit about what inspires you about our work in the city.
Hello, I'm Jillian Gibson. I often go by my maiden name, Jill Hodge, because that's the most frequently used one. I've had that name longer than I've had my husband. I was interested in volunteering for one of the city boards several years ago. I've already lost count. Time flies when you have a young child. And I was so glad that they offered me a position on the Inclusivity Board because it gave me a chance to point out some minor things that make participating in local government kind of hard for people who work full time or have young kids. And I really enjoy the work because although it's not picket lining or anything dramatic, it's nice to know that we have a chance to raise our voice and point out things that not everybody thinks about all the time, because no one can think of everything every time. And as good intentioned and as hardworking as our city council is, I think sometimes they need to be reminded of things that they might not have overlooked.
Thanks, Jill. Appreciate you. Okay, great. So just kind of overall, like Cody, did you want to share any kind of overall framing thoughts or anything before we kind of just open up to conversation?
Well, maybe Michael, so from what well, and maybe not Michael, the previous staff liaison or Kit, who's on his last days with the city, had asked to meet to talk about priorities of the two groups. So what you all as a Human Services Board are looking for when it comes to your grants this year, if you're prioritizing those, and for Inclusivity Board to share what ours are so that maybe that helps inform the process for Human Services Board. So maybe Inclusivity Board talks about, where we feel the greatest needs are in the community in this year as they work through the grant process. And maybe then we can also hear from you all about what you're seeing so that.
Yeah, I can, that was our goal. We made the request of KID. So just to maybe back up a little bit in case some people don't know what the Human Services Board does. So the city council and the city of Westminster set aside about $124,000. I don't know, Michael, correct me if I'm wrong, that is granted out to nonprofits that work with individuals in Westminster. And our board makes recommendations to the city council on how to disperse those grants. And so the city council has given us some general guidance on areas they'd like us to focus on over the years. And those have been homelessness, food security, and medical type issues. But we do also look at other areas as well. And they do like us to try to fund everybody unless they just really don't meet the grant needs. It means we can't give everybody as much as they want, obviously, but it's always helpful to be able to help those organizations. And what we wanted to do, and our goal as Hope, is that we didn't want to miss an opportunity that you guys, as many of you pointed out in your intros, right? You have a unique perspective and look in the work that you're doing with the city and may know of gap areas or need areas that we should be really looking to see if these nonprofits are filling and helping support that work so that we're kind of working together instead of each having kind of our own separate goals and not realizing the work that the others are doing.
Mhm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's a great recap.
Yeah. Thank you.
That's, you're the chair.
That's why you can never leave. Yeah, exactly. Well, thank you for that because we definitely, we've long talked, and I know the city, we talked at some point about even chairs coming together, or representatives from boards coming together in regular meetings, and we haven't quite gotten there yet. I know we've had transition with council and things of that nature, but I think it is really critical that we all are on the same page as far as working together for the betterment of our community. And of course, we honor diversity of thinking and diversity of ideas, and we understand that we have the same cheerleaders often in the room, but your work with, for example, homelessness and your work with displaced persons and families, I know that's a important work to our board. Alan does so much great work, and I know others on this board around really advocacy and outreach. And I think for us, and certainly everyone, you can correct me if I'm wrong, as I know you will, but the big thing that I've seen as a priority for us is really outreach. To Michelle's point, how do we ensure access? How do we get outside of the box thinking and really get into the communities that we're trying to serve in a way that is representative and not maybe have an assumption that they'll come to us or that they know how to come to us. And so I know that we started aligning a little bit more, for example, with like libraries. We know that libraries are a big source of community information. People go to the library for a lot of different things. And we also realize the library is not a one-stop shop for everyone. Some people don't know that our libraries are there. Some people might not go to the library for a lot of reasons because they may not frankly trust some of the government organizations that we have, regardless of what the label is, whether they're schools or whether they're libraries or city hall. So I think the big thing for us is how do we outreach to ensure that we are giving resources how do we make sure that we are a welcoming and safe community? And those are priorities that we continue to try to really think about and address. In the past, we've also been somewhat of a response board. If there are issues like, there were some, for example, hate flyers that were published some time ago in Northern Westminster, we will try to stand and make a response and try to reach out to the people or persons involved and really just try to make a statement. And the city has typically been very supportive and unified in those efforts. So that's really kind of where we have been. We're always navigating a little bit of the political aspect of what diversity and inclusion are. I'll be frank, I mean, and there are a lot of different people that have different ideas of what that is. And I think part of that, our goal is really education and coming to terms with, okay, what is it that we can do? We're not here to like push an agenda. We're here to support and figure out how we can help. So I think those are kind of the overall, did that
Absolutely.
provide a
That was
frame?
actually,
Good.
oh. It's hard to encapsulate the random things we do.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah, please add in anything that you feel, maybe,
I mean, I have to say, if I may jump in.
please.
Some of the things that you can actually see now that we have, in a sense, sort of been not responsible for, but we've really pushed diversity in our city events. So as you probably know, we had our, what was it, World Fest? Is that what they called it?
Around the World Fair.
Fair or something? Yeah, I can't remember the name. It was, but like, I mean, that was the first time the city had put on something that was meant to be sort of inclusive of cultures that are part of our city. So we really worked very hard with Parks, Rec, and Libraries to make sure that entertainment that's booked for various festivals has a lot of different flavors to it. That it's not just all the same sort of cover bands, things along those lines. And so, and then I think Parks, Recs, and Libraries did a great job this year with the book, so the book club, the city book club. I think that was a really cool thing. Sounded like it got a decent amount of participation. So things like that, so Parks, Recs, and Library obviously is the most outward facing department I think that we have, right? That most people interact with. So we've been doing that sort of stuff. So it took us a hot minute to kind of get to that point, but it was continual conversations with folks in PRL. Yeah. We're ready to take it to the next level though, for sure.
And often we advise on maybe some policy and thinking because, with the renaming pieces, when we rename parks, we've been sought by the council to like provide some input and perspective around what the naming process is and how do we bring that lens of inclusivity in everything we do, from hiring practices to naming city parks. So what are some of the things that we do? So we have an umbrella of things where, I would say that we don't necessarily have a specialty, but we are very like eclectic in what we do, I guess. So in that spirit, kind of what would be an ask for you? Because I hear you say, well, we give out grant funding and we give out, these opportunities. What would be an ask like from our group that could help support you in your work? Like, is it that you're looking through a different lens of inclusivity? Is it that you are maybe looking for more inclusive projects to think about as far as grant funding? Like what would be some of the things that you might?
I think for me, and then I'll, as speak to whatever you were thinking. I think for one with you mentioned outreach, right? Which I think is so important. And we don't necessarily have that same goal or thing that we're doing, right? So what I would want to know from you all is if in your outreach, you are finding that there is a group of individuals in Westminster who are underrepresented and underserved, who need services, and that there's like maybe a gap, that you would let us know, right? And then when we're looking at grant applications, we can look for agencies that are working with that population and maybe prioritize their funding in the way that we're looking at it. Does that make sense? So that is one goal I think that definitely that I would have. And then in hearing you talk, I think something else that stuck out to me with that is that with the connections that you all are making, we've obviously already closed the grant application for this year, but in future years, I think making sure that we give the information about the grant application to this board so that you guys can share it through your networks as well, so that more nonprofits are finding that grant application and access to that funding.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Could you give us a brief overview of the kinds of grant applications you've gotten? And also, from my perspective, how much budget did you really have to accomplish your goals, given
Yeah.
the number of applications coming in?
So we, like I said, have 124,000. I think this year the request came in at about 212,000. And I think it was probably about
Less than last year.
25 organizations that applied this year for those dollars. It ranges really from anything to people providing services to the unhoused, to senior centers, to the radio station for people who are bodily impaired, creating content for them, to lots of food security services, a couple of like mental health and clinical services, just a wide variety of things that we see. And like I said, the council likes us to try to support everyone. If you're not as familiar with nonprofits, we're not funding anyone's whole project. And the amount of funding that we provide, one of the things that we look at when we're doing that is we do think about what is percentage of our funding makes up what they need, right? So one of our recipients is the fish. If you guys are familiar with fish and food security, we make up a lot of their funding, the Westminster Grant does. So we try to make sure we honor that in our work with them. But it can be just as valuable for nonprofits, even if it's a smaller amount of money, to be able to say that they have a partnership with the city of Westminster. That helps them get additional grants and funding, and it gives them credibility. So while it can sometimes seem like it's a negligible amount or something like that, you don't know how those funds are helping them then access other resources and services. So that's why we try to do that. And then we try to think about those kind of broad priorities from the city council. We also look at how many citizens in Westminster they actually serve. That's one of the things that they have to report to us. And then we also look at geographically where they fall on the county line in the individuals that they're serving to ensure that we have some equity that way as well, if we can. And then we look at all of those factors to kind of come up with the numbers to figure out where the money lands and how strong the application is. We do ask them specifically, what are you going to do with this money? And, if they have a really strong plan for it, obviously that looks a little bit more favorable to us than if the plan is less strong.
How has the budget changed over a year from your experience?
Has not changed since I have been.
It sounds like you need about twice as much money.
Yes.
There's some additional funds during COVID
Yeah.
specifically in regard to food
Yeah,
insecurity.
so some of the Recovery Act dollars from the federal government that the city got, they designated for COVID, they designated for the nonprofits. And so we opened a second grant process when we had that funding to give the individuals to help with the pandemic.
You make the recommendations to council.
They set the budget and then we make the recommendations within that budget on how to fund each nonprofit.
Yeah.
So you review the applications, you're the ones, yeah.
Yeah.
I think on the low end, is it 2,000 or 3,000 maybe? Some organizations would receive, and perhaps they've requested 10. And the most that I think I've seen is 10,000 that any organization receives.
And what percentage are you doing really well as far as when you present to council and say, this is what we want, that they go for it?
Yes, they've approved our recommendations every year. There've been a couple of
Okay.
questions some years, but they've approved our recommendations every year.
And it doesn't matter what kind of council we have, because the council keeps changing.
Yeah, since I've been doing it, it hasn't been a concern. There has been one agency over the years that's applied and they didn't apply this time. That there was some question, I think, about the definition for some people about residents and whether or not they were serving an immigrant population. And whether or not those individuals who were undocumented were residents, but in the end, they approved.
Right, because
funding.
we tried to come from the lens of they're residing here, receiving services that are critical to them as a resident. Similar to if an individual experiencing homelessness does not have an address, it doesn't mean that they're not living in the city of Westminster proper. But like, we have to take that into account, to your point, of the individuals that you see.
And I think that's great. I think it's great that whatever kind of council that you have, that you are all strong enough in your proposals that they pretty much say, we agree.
Yeah, we've been very fortunate. Yeah.
Generally, sorry to pipe in, most of the applicants are consistent year after year too. It's usually the funding amounts and maybe a couple new ones here and there, right?
Yeah,
So
usually
it's something council's familiar with.
with. Usually it's pretty consistent. Sometimes some drop off for a year because they decide not to, some join. When we have new organizations that haven't applied before, we do ask them to come in and do like a 10-15 minute presentation so we can get to know them and understand their services more than we can just through reading an application. So we look at that as well.
I wonder if the city is or can, if there's a way that we can facilitate sort of helping connect people who need those services with those specific providers of services. Is that happening now? Or is that something that we might be able to urge on the city?
I am not sure. I do think that is one of the reasons that they, Michael, you can maybe speak to this better than I, but when Michael transitioned and Kit became our staff to the board, I think that was one of the goals because that was Kit's sort of role with the city. And so that way he could facilitate that a little bit.
And I think that's a great question because I'm on the city website. I'm trying to read, you're probably faster navigating the website. I'm trying to remember if we list out the organizations that we fund.
Yes.
And I believe that we do, right? I'm like, I believe that we do. And I think it would be an interesting exercise to maybe publicize that a little bit more in one of the city publications that goes out, or highlight perhaps one per, so about 25, one or two per month. I don't know. It might be interesting because it might spark interest saying, oh, well, I'm with a nonprofit. I serve this population as well. I'd like to apply.
Yeah.
If there were, I know we definitely wanted to find more ways to get the word out about the application process and generate more interest.
I think also another opportunity with the work that you all are doing and trying to partner to have events that are more inclusive, you know, depending on the event and what the goal of the event is, but potentially inviting those nonprofits to have booths and so that they can connect with our citizens and tell them about the services that they could provide them.
Can they get the booths for nothing?
We have, don't quote me on this, but they need to contact Leah Crumples in special events. I know that she has, they have pricing differences for our community partners, nonprofits, schools, things like that. So I can't tell you for certain. I don't want to misspeak, but.
That would be great
but that
because
could
that would
be an
together.
interesting ask of council, perhaps start to include free booth space for some grantees.
Well,
Yeah.
yes.
Because
It's the city.
Operations decision.
Is it? Oh, okay.
Decision,
Oh,
not
it
a
is.
policy decision.
Okay.
So I would the first step would be to check with Leah Crumples, who's the special senior events coordinator, she will have that information and it may already be happening. So no need to ask for something if it's already occurring. And I don't know for sure what the criteria are or what the arrangement is to make that happen. She's the best point of contact and usually we're pretty flexible and willing to help our community partners. So I don't imagine that they're paying for booth space.
And this,
Yeah, I
would be
think
what type of events? I'm sorry.
I think more, even if you guys just let us know what those types of things are, like the around the world, did I get that?
Yeah, around the world.
Around the world or something.
Yeah.
And if there
Around
is
the
that
world.
opportunity, then we could, you know, with Michael's help or our staff's help, send that information to our grantees and say, if you're interested in, you know, being there so that you can reach people and tell them about your services, here's that opportunity. Or
Right, and nonprofits are usually pretty good about getting the word out to their group of individuals that they're already serving or their outreach list, and it just kind of goes from there.
And following up what you were saying on the publication idea, for instance, I think I got the Westie today dropped.
I did too.
That would, I mean, that promotes the city. It promotes those services, those nonprofits also to the residents. To let them know that they may see something that the resident could say, I could avail myself or contact that nonprofit. Like you were saying, using the fish, for example.
Or folks like yourself that have contact with folks that may be in need of services, but that person may not know what's available to them.
Yeah, it's a good email that they send out. It's concise and has lots of good information. It could certainly include, since it goes out weekly, it could certainly include every other week, potentially something about one of the boards.
Yeah, but we certainly can look at ways in which we can get the word out differently. I think one of the things we're always like, well, it's on our website. It's like, great, for the people that don't have web internet, that doesn't help them.
That's right.
You know, for the people that are highly mobile, that doesn't help them. So I think, you know, I certainly, like, we've traditionally represented Inclusivity Board at our city events and things. I'd be more than happy to help represent the work that you're all doing as well by like having information about the application process, success stories of what organizations are doing to really impact the persons and the people that we are working with. And in the interim, what we will do is if we hear of needs and we hear of these things, we certainly can bring those to your attention and make those contacts viable for you.
I would think as city boards, you could have a fairly large inclusivity and human, I'm sorry, human services. I was going to say resources. That's not right. Human services, they are resources. And have one large tent with all those groups represented.
Yeah.
And so.
Just one more question about funding. Do you have to lobby each annually for the grant money or is it pretty much automatic?
It's part of the council's annual budget process.
I think the only additional request that was made by us was for additional funding. Was it last year that we tried to push that through? Yeah. So,
Yeah, we do make it clear every year that we have more requests than we have funding for, right? And obviously, the city has many budgetary decisions that they have to make.
I would think at a minimum, we could recommend that funding increase. So then you have an additional board backing that up.
And we do have a little bit of funding that maybe we could figure out ways to creatively.
Do we still?
We won't next year, but we do now. So hurry up before the end of the year, like request stuff from us.
Yeah, and I imagine there won't be increases to Human Services Board funding next year either. The budget's voted on before the election. And we have a guiding principle of thrift. So we've recently went through all of council sponsorship, which is separate from this, but similar organizations and are redefining that as well. So maybe not in 2024, but maybe 2020.
Yeah, I think to that point and to help support you all, whatever we can do to advocate for the fact that your needs are growing. We see that more and more people are being displaced from their homes. Like this has been an issue that people like Rich and Donna, like with housing affordability, they've been marching and beating on this drum for years. And it continues to consistently change. We have this development that continues to make affordability a challenge. And so all the more reason that boards like yours are going to be sought after resources. And to say that the funding is adequate as it was 6 years ago is absolutely, I mean, it doesn't feel like that is proportionate.
The
to
needs
what
have
it
not
needs.
shrunk.
Yeah, exactly. So whatever we could do to, yeah, to advocate in that way for all of you as we connect, we certainly won't overtake your messaging, but we're happy to support it.
Yeah.
So.
Donna?
Donna, yes, Donna, please.
Yes, I just going to piggyback on what you're saying, Justin. I think it's important for us as a board to support and work with the city council to let them know that needs change and that sort of thing. So whatever we can do through our board and also through our board contact, I really recommend that we look into that and do what we can.
Thank you. Lisa?
So I have one thought, which is if you're looking for us to help put information out about these different programs and things like, you know, the grantees, it would really help us to have a list of what the grants are and maybe have it prioritized by like who needs to get the word out the most and things like that. And are there any particular populations that it would, you know, this population, this grant would really like to be heard about more amongst this population. So that would be helpful to us.
Yeah, I think that's the gap for us, and part of why we're here is that we also aren't really boots on the ground, right? So we also don't know what those gaps are in our community. And so we're also really striving to figure out what are those so that we're helping to address those in any way that we can.
So I guess I was assuming that you would hear that information from the people that you're giving the grants to. Are they giving you any of that kind of information?
That's a yes.
Yeah, in some ways. Sometimes in their applications, they'll say what they're seeing as differences year over year and why their needs have maybe changed. But I wouldn't say it's as specific. And I think another thing that's just important to me is that while it's great that we have the same applicants often year after year, I know there are many more nonprofits in Westminster and serving Westminster who aren't applying for those grants. And so is there some gap or barrier there as well, right? Is there an underrepresented population that they're serving that we're missing and not realizing is a big need area for us, you know? I think like I saw an article a year ago, 2 years ago, that like a bunch of refugees had joined our community, and I have no idea who helped those individuals or, you know, or who's been serving them. And we haven't gotten any applications from nonprofits who've identified that. So like for me, just in myself, that feels like a gap, right? Of like, what are we doing for that community?
Economic development and probably the clerk's office have like business licenses list. So if you're operating and what type of operation you have in the city. So that would be a way to, we could likely, Michael, I think, gather that list or ask for it. I think, and religious groups, we have sort of a couple different categories that might be a place that you could start. And, you know, if they haven't applied before, maybe there's an opportunity to reach out to them and let them know. But I'm pretty sure I know we have lists of all the businesses that operate here, and I think they're identified by for profit or not.
Between Jeffco, Adams, and the city of Westminster, usually there's stuff on the websites that show the nonprofits that are serving those communities. Broomfield too, because there's a lot of crossover, like the fish, for example. So they're out there. I think it's just a matter of if we decide we want to take all those extra steps and reach out as a board. Hey, have you applied? Have you thought of applying?
And that was one thing I was thinking, because I know you're a little bit more of the internal like approval process. That could be one thing that our larger board could assist with, is doing some of the outreach. If you saying like, for example, we, you know, we're looking to as we look at your list, which is online, but as we look and we're like, okay, have you thought about these things? Or if you tell us, these are kind of the things we'd like to maybe explore, we can do some of that work. I mean, we are an action board, so we can do some of the reaching out on your behalf. I think the critical thing would be, we want to make sure to represent you well. So, I mean, I would like to maybe review the application and kind of get an
I
idea of
think that
what you're
would,
looking
I
for.
think that would be of great benefit to us.
Yeah.
Perhaps you would see something within the application form, and everybody gets the same form, that, you know, that could be improved, expanded.
Sure.
Yeah, and an interesting thing about any grant process in general, whether it's city, county, state, federal, it's just not inclusive, period. It is and it isn't. It's inclusive in that anybody can apply if they have the staff and time and knowledge about it. It's not like there's anybody saying, let me help you through this. So I'm just throwing that out there, not as a judgment, but just across the board, like the nonprofit I work for, our ED, she's the one that does most of the grant writing. I mean, like, it's just, most nonprofits are so strapped with their resources to apply. And so it's just very interesting to me, like, when we're talking about inclusivity in general, it's just not an inclusive process, you know, and
Yeah,
that's okay. Just throwing it out there.
At the state level, they've started, and including it actually into the state budget, creating like grant assistance hubs, technical assistance hubs to help people learn how to apply. Sorry, that was like sort of a tangent, but
No, it's related.
It's related. You said you have some money. So I mean, maybe that's I don't know how, but you don't have it much longer.
It's not.
Something akin to like the Small Business Administration with retired executives who give their time to help companies succeed. Because I think that's a terrific idea.
And some of the applications, I would say, are more polished than others.
Right.
I mean, I think some organizations have actual grant writers in their nonprofit organization. Some of them are less polished, but maybe equally compelling. And I did grant reading for the United Way for a number of years. And the training we took, one of the things that they emphasized was don't judge based on the polish, judge based on need. And that's an awareness thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, one of the things we do with applicants on the Jefferson County Cultural Council is we really encourage inclusion in all its forms in their applications and their operation. Do you guys look at how inclusive, and that can mean different things, but how inclusive an organization is in their application?
So we use the state has a standard grant template that they encourage everyone to use, so that if you're applying for multiple grants, you can just, it's the same, it's similar, it's the same. There is a question about EDI on there, and ask them about how they incorporate it into their policies, how they put it into practice, their board makeup, things like that.
How important is that to the granting the application?
I always review that part and talk about it. And we do talk about it. It's definitely not one of the main charges of what we're looking at for when we're doing it. But I think that's, again, I think part of the opportunity here, like in our partnership or whoever, like if somebody came to us and said, we have this population that is really in need of services from nonprofits, and we could look for those in the application.
What are your top 5 or 6 that, because you had mentioned homelessness and of course food insecurity. I see a lot of food insecurity out there, but what do you think has been over the past few years been your top 5 or 6 areas that you've had grantees?
Yeah, those 2 are definitely the top 2, and then probably mental health type,
Mental health.
disability support.
Yes, and then ones that I see boots on the ground every day are transportation and housing, just all the time. We hand out bus tickets for our clients and, but, you know, so we also fund some multi-service organizations where they're hitting several areas. So we look at that as well. If it's not like just food or just this, you know, mental health, something like that. If they're trying to hit all the services for their clients. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that helps.
There also were a couple of applications last year from organizations that are helping immigrants work their way through the immigration system. That
Yeah, they didn't apply this year.
Well,
Rocky Mountain Immigration Network.
I think there were two that I'm remembering.
Yeah.
well,
But we look for that, like, you know, some of them will say, because of that question in the grant application, they'll say that they, you know, work with individuals who are trying to seek citizenship or, you know, whatever it is that they help with. We do have a lot of organizations that touch the unhoused. And I know one thing that we talked about last year when we reviewed those applications as well is just what is their, you know, in addition to the immediate things that they're trying to help them with, what is their like long-term case management look like, or how do they try to move that person to sustainability? And so we look at that within the applications as well.
right, because you can't depend on your funding to keep
Mhm.
any systemic like
Yeah.
pieces going. Can maybe help kickstart things, but well, okay.
Yeah, and then the last thing I'll bring up that I find interesting, and I think about this all the time, just in every aspect of my life, is when we're talking about DEI initiatives and talking about like the importance of looking at how their board is trying to handle that when the boards here are not that diverse either. And like as a non-diverse board, looking at whether or not a board, an applicant is meeting DEI requirement, like that just hits me upside the head. I'm like,
Yeah.
really? Is that
Yeah.
really?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, does that make sense?
I
Like, are
totally hear
we
that,
meeting
yeah.
that in this room, you
Yeah.
know, just in general, between two boards?
Yeah, we have
I
that,
see.
we have that
Yeah.
conversation. It's like, you
Yeah.
know, because there's a lot of philosophy about those with privilege have to do the work, you know, in some circles, it's like, you know, and we've talked about, because we have we've had a fairly diverse board over the years. But I think you're absolutely right. Like,
This is always an interesting thing in the back of my head.
I think, and it's important to be thoughtful of those things, for sure. And I appreciate you bringing that up. But one of the things that we can do, we certainly can help you get the word out. And we can look at if you're okay with this, we can look at the application process. Maybe we can all review that a little bit and also look at some of the organizations within our lenses, because maybe there'll be things that Rich thinks about. And it's like, oh, this organization could really benefit from maybe a request for a grant of $1,000 or whatnot. And then we can maybe present that to you. And I'm happy to represent when we go out to the festivals and such. You're welcome to join us. But if you want us to be the sort of forward facing persons to kind of get them aligned, we'd be happy to do that as well. So. Great.
Just wondering, have you guys noticed any trends or patterns in that DEI aspect of the grants that are coming into you that, oh, a lot of people seem to have trouble with this aspect of it or that aspect of it or anything?
Like in their responses.
It's a great question. I don't think I have.
Question, I don't think so. I think if anything, since I've started, I've seen an increase in internal resources to help individuals, like more Spanish speaking staff, and things like that, which, you know, I think it's a bonus benefit.
When's your next grant cycle?
It's now.
Oh,
And the applications are in. So that's, I would want to, like, before we reviewed them, chat with you, but some of these ideas obviously are
Longer term.
yeah, longer term or sooner in our grant process. So preparing for next year's release of the next grant.
So we're in the process of reviewing and then making determinations. What it's like the third week of July, I think.
It would be interesting to Seth's point if, like, even with that one question on, you know, how is DEI being incorporated in this project or in your organization? It would be interesting to see if there are any trends that are coming up from the perspective of maybe like even listing out those trends and then looking at those. I know those are confidential, but just in general, taking away all of the identifiable information, really looking at like, what are some of the common words that are being used and what are some of the words that maybe aren't being used that then we can look at and say, okay, well, this is interesting. This might be an area of possible growth for all of us. You know,
Yeah, it strikes me that if, as you're doing the review, you can sort of collect the information about, well, now we've got a big list of like what all our grantees are saying they're doing. Both that would be something that we could try to review and sort of say if we see any gaps. And also it might be something that would be useful to provide to them of like, here's a list of DEI things that successful applicants have done for anybody who's struggling with it. They might say, oh, we could get some more Spanish speakers on our staff. That would be a good idea. So.
Well, but they might actually have them and not articulate that in the application.
Or-
That would be my,
Oh, yeah.
that's kind
Oh,
of my reaction
It
to
occurred to me
that.
that
is
I should write that down.
Ask for it, yeah.
Yeah.
Not to make more work for you.
Yeah, I think the details of the answers are probably not detailed enough for that. They're more generic, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, those answers tend to be.
They have, a kind of boilerplate
Yes.
words that,
Yeah.
that, would be assumed to be appropriate responses.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
well, thank you so much for the work you're all doing. This is,
Yeah.
I mean, it's amazing that you're giving your perspective, your energy. I know it's a busy time for you in reviewing the applications. We're here to support you, and if you need anything or if things come up as you sort of reflect and process, we're good at reflecting and processing at this end. But as things come up and you're like, you know what, this would be a need, or this could be one way that this board could help support, we're more than happy to consider all avenues for your success. So,
Thank you all. Thank you for your time.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you for what you do.
It's a pleasure. Certainly dovetail.
Yeah.
Certainly dovetail. Well, thank you. Very concrete.
Yeah.
Thank you all.
Do this more.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Does everybody want to do like a 3-minute stretch break maybe and kind of do a stretcher? Everybody good? Feel fine?
Okay.
Yeah.
You're looking at me.
No. Well, you were the one looking at me. That's why I was there. Thank you, friends. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Southern for his family.
All right, friends. Thank you. No, I think these are the conversations that will help us as we sort of get on the same page with other boards. I think
Yes.
the more voices we have in advocating and understanding what the needs are of our community, I think is just a benefit to all of us. So, and thank you for your thoughtful questions. I thought, hopefully, and what I can do is I'll make sure to kind of circle around with Katie and talk to them about, okay, like in the next few weeks and say, has anything come up? What can we do? Here's some ideas. And if you have anything that you'd like to share, brainstorm, send them an email, and then we can get
I
on.
think it's great breaking out of the silo.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, more things, what do they say? More heads in the room are better than one head in the room. So,
I know, it kind of occurs to me, how do we try to move our city government? You hear about needs for food, needs for housing, needs for health, needs for mental health care. And why are these not the same priority as water and streets and fire protection?
yes.
They're fundamental human needs. And here we have this pittance for a budget to try and get someone else to do it. I just had to speak.
And our needs are not, to your point, Rich, the needs are not diminishing. They're not shrinking.
They're not.
So,
They're not.
the Westminster, I would argue, is a vastly different place than it was 5 years ago.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
so.
Yep.
No, So thank you, well put. Okay, so going into old business, so looking at reviewing and approving the previous meeting minutes for the month of May. Do we have any motion?
I move to accept.
Move to accept the minutes as written.
I'll second.
There is a second. Any discussion?
Nice job.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
he's
isn't
so
it-
efficient.
The difference
Second
between
half.
Seth here and Seth not here is night and day. So, yeah. I tried to do it and I'm like, I'm no Seth. I'll just. All right. Okay. Hearing no additional discussion, all in favor of accepting the May meeting minutes?
Aye.
Is there anyone that is opposed? Does anyone choose to abstain? Okay, so moved. Thank you. Mayor Pro.
Is Donna voting or did she have?
Yeah, she's got her hand up.
Vote in favor of mine, just haven't lowered my hand.
Okay.
All right. Mayor Pro Tem is not here. I know he had a few other things going on tonight.
Yes,
so.
tonight's Civic Academy. I think Kathy, I
Yes.
walked into Kathy's,
Yep.
tonight's the beginning of the third Civic Academy and it's full up. So 20 participants this year. So that's big.
Wow, that's great.
That's capacity. So
Oh,
big deal. Yeah, Catherine's running it this year. So should be
Fantastic.
fantastic.
sounds like a pretty interesting time too, so. No new business. I know we kind of blended some of the new business with what our presentation / discussion was.
I was gonna see if I can do anything for Mayor Pro Tem in his place.
Oh, yeah.
I can't be him, but I
Yeah.
was thinking, were any major council items?
So while you think about that,
Mhm.
and since we're in new business, I honestly feel like if we do have a budget and we have the whispers on the wind say that budget will not be there for our next board cycle,
Mhm.
perhaps we should start thinking about ways we might be able to put that money to use. So not sure if anybody has any ideas. One thing that I was thinking of, and this is, and Alan, you and I still have to get together about the ambassador program, is, maybe we can use some of that to do, to maybe sort of host, if you will, some community gatherings where, we're maybe hitting South Westminster and trying to get folks together to talk about the issues that they're experiencing in their specific community. Because I do feel like that's the one thing that for all, in the services board included, we're working with little information about what is really needed, right? And the only way to really get that information is to get out there and gather it. And we don't seem to have a lot of information gathering, at least that's provided to us by the city. So
I would gonna flip it and say we should find out, it would be good to articulate what specifically we're looking for and then ask the groups, because also there's sort of an engagement overload in specific areas of our city that they don't want it anymore because things don't come out of it, or that's the perception. And so that just creates a bigger roadblock or a different set of expectations. And so maybe articulating in a well thought out way what would be helpful would be the right way to start. Because I will say there are many parts of the city that are very engaged with on a regular basis about a variety of things. And the information probably exists and we, A, don't want to duplicate, and 2, don't want to wear folks out, right?
Okay.
So maybe asking as a first step before.
So when you mean wearing folks out, you're talking about the community.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, the town hall I went to 2.5 weeks ago, is that what it was? Pretty interesting. A lot of anger was coming from, and they weren't all, even though it was in South Westminster, most of the people that I heard and who identified where they came from were now South Westminster people. But many of the people were, as I said, there was a lot of anger there. And that was actually, that's a good thing, because if you're hearing that anger, then you can capitalize on that and turn that into something positive. But I get to your point there, Cody, is that people say, I'm there, I say things, and what's happened?
Mhm.
So. I
And
think-
same with surveys and
Yeah.
there are parts of town that.
So what's a good way of going about this, Michelle?
What's that?
What you're saying, what would then be a good way of going about this, engaging the community?
You know, I mean, that's a good question because I
Yeah,
don't know
like, what
what
are we
outreach
looking
is being
for?
done,
Yeah.
where it's being done and who it's actually reaching in terms of who is being asked
So
for.
maybe
their
it is, what
input.
information are you
So-
looking for? And let's see
Right.
where it may have already been gathered,
But
right?
then I think you've also identified something of a gap in internal communications between the city and even our board too, which is obviously if there are surveys and information gathering, like, I don't know, is there anything coming out of that we should be apprised of that maybe we don't know? That we could maybe help to formulate ideas or solutions or recommendations. So, so maybe that's something that we can try to address. I don't know if that's with the mayor pro tem or if that's, I don't know. Because it's great. I mean, if there's information out there already, then.
But I don't know, it's not that it's not public. I mean, everything we do is public information, but I don't know that every survey or I would say every outreach event that is occurring is on the website. It's
Right.
on the calendar, like and it tells you what the focus is. I mean, we just had the Sheridan Green open house last week.
Right, but are there
mean,
summaries published?
sometimes they are, it depends.
Yeah.
And that one, I think Mark talked about that on Monday night. They hope to come back to council with a recommendation by August or September, I think. So, the results do come, it's not, of course, immediate in most cases. The town hall, all those questions were answered and posted within 2 weeks of that meeting.
Okay, so that is
So
online.
They are doing that. I think that's a pretty standard part of the practice. When it comes to like a survey of the business community, I don't know that, I think that's, I don't know what economic development does with those sorts of things, except for to use it to improve their products and their programs.
Okay.
Certainly we're very conscientious as an organization of who we're reaching out to and how and when because of that sort of, we've learned from the engagement overload. So there was, remember Westminster Forward? And we collected all the information because there were like 6 master plans at the same time. So instead of having 6 different paths for engagement on those 6 master plans, we did it collectively. So they're trying, as an organization, as a staff, we try really hard to be mindful of that. Most of those things do come out with results either via a council meeting or as a follow-up for the event itself. I think the Sheridan Green, they collected all that. I don't know how that will come out I know for certain it will in the council conversations. I don't know how before that, but almost all of that becomes part of the public record and is posted. And I would say the vast majority is probably in a council memo.
Okay.
I don't think any of it's being kept just internally.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of other examples. They did the
The
ice cream
library,
social.
the Irving Street Library, about what to do with the ground.
Yeah,
Right. I remember that one. I wasn't able to go to that one.
yeah. And that we take that very seriously, taking that input and then using it to find a solution or a recommendation that's then proposed to council. Like, I don't think
Right.
any engagement goes
And,
does that?
Yeah.
and where does one find council memos?
On the website.
Okay.
Yep. It's basically the agendas. It's included in there, but sometimes they can be 300 pages worth of
Right.
documents.
So I will tell you in the next few weeks, that's going to become a lot more user friendly.
Okay,
So
okay.
maybe I shouldn't say a few weeks. There's nothing in the system. This is supposed to be like
some point
good in January and it's June and there's still pieces, but it'll like timestamp in the meeting when the conversation's happening and attach that piece of the agenda, that specific memo with all the attachments, that sort of thing.
I will
And then the
say
minutes.
that I've heard good things about the potential for using ChatGPT as a way to summarize very large documents.
Oh,
That you can provide the very large document as an input and then ask questions about it.
Interesting.
However, you know, you have to then double check everything. to see How
Right,
much of it was hallucinated.
Yeah.
Statistically, most likely
It's true.
responses, not like the actual data
Uh-huh.
necessarily, but that might be useful.
Yeah.
useful technique.
So since it's really tough to like, you know, like I used to follow council stuff like in detail for a span of time. And I started not having enough time to do that. Is it appropriate for us to, since you are intimately involved with that process, to ask you to alert us to like the results of a survey that might be brought forward to council, just to let us know that it exists? And then it's on us to take a look at it.
Or should that be the mayor pro tem since?
Or the mayor pro tem, okay, yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
who
because
is
I would say,
appropriate to ask.
so to be totally honest with you, I don't read the agenda
Oh, okay,
memos.
okay.
I sit in every meeting and I hear the discussion and the
Right.
policy making, but my
Okay.
role is not to
To actually,
like, I don't even,
okay. I mean, that's a lot of.
and
time.
then I would say for all the other boards with that sort of thing, I don't know who would do that for them because I'm the only one of the staff who happens to have the
But
council.
they're involved in it.
But yeah, that's what I would say. That might be the right thing, is asking Mayor Pro Tem, you know,
To include that in his reports to
Okay.
us.
right?
That would be
yeah.
helpful.
Mhm.
Because
And I don't know that it comes at every meeting. But every time, all the engagement when it is informing a decision is included. It's just like a planning
Mhm.
proposal, right? And you hear that from the presentation. So, I mean,
yeah.
it's there and it's not, like I said, it's all public. It's just a matter of how do we get it to you or
Right.
what is it saying?
Just alerting us, really.
You asked the mayor pro tem since.
I mean,
Please include it.
yeah, I mean, we could ask to be a standing item on
Yeah.
like some of his report and I could talk to him and one thing I was thinking about going back to, because I get it, there's a lot of information and I know the engagement piece can be a little bit like engagement overwhelm. Some people have.
Right.
To your point, I think earlier, like, how can we leverage the funds we currently have to do something good for the community in terms of inclusivity and diversity? And so I've been thinking, and I know I'm not talking about replicating the Welcome America, like I'm not talking about that, but remember when we did the lunch and we brought people in and we engaged, I think kind of to your, some of your points.
Yep.
We've done that, or maybe at some of the festivals coming up, are there ways that we can, I don't know, leverage like treats or, you know, like outreach pieces to where we can like give people like, you know, things so that they can remember what we do and who we are, like just a little bit more of an outreach focus.
Did we ever do a neighborhood grants program? We've never
I
done
think
that.
that's what that money was for. And
Okay.
because they're happening in others.
Yeah, exactly.
That's why.
And so I don't know if all of you are familiar with what neighborhood grants are. So Arvada, for example, since that's the district that I work for, they have small scale grants that they give to neighborhoods that apply. So it could be
Parks
things
does
like
have that.
they do.
Absolutely.
Okay.
What's similar to Arvada's. So
Yeah, I just couldn't find anything on, I hate our
You go
website.
through
I'm gonna tell you, I
Parks
really
Recreation.
hate our website. I can't find shit.
neighborhood improvements. So like if you had your neighborhood wanted to plant.
Oh, no, this is not neighborhood improvements.
Oh.
This is literally just, I mean, it can
Well, it
be,
can be.
but
They also do like
they also
the
encourage
trucks and
things.
the social.
Right,
yeah,
they encourage
party.
more social interaction between neighbors.
Yeah.
And that would be a really cool thing is.
Stay here for 10 minutes with me after this
Okay,
meeting.
I will.
I think the HOA might have done that a couple years ago.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
So Parks Recreation Libraries does one and then
There's a
community development has,
beautification
yeah,
program.
and then
yeah.
community development does too. So not the social piece,
Right.
but yeah.
So I just wanted to sort of make sure that I have summarized accurately.
Oh, sorry. We're jumping.
Since you are not ChatGPT.
But it's really close to it. Very close.
So it sounds like the to-do item that is coming out of a lot of this is that we should ask Mayor Pro Tem to highlight engagement efforts in his reports.
Maybe the
Yeah.
outcomes of
Yeah,
engagement.
engagement
There we
results,
go.
yeah, so surveys or any sort of formal engagement with the community.
Yeah.
And we can explain when he goes to a council meeting and they're making a decision and that's been something that supported a recommendation from staff that he shares that happened, right, in his regular report. Does that make sense?
Say it again.
As opposed to saying him every time there's an outreach and engagement activity, can we have the results? So that if the request might be best phrased, when council is making a policy decision that's been informed by community engagement, can you share those results or give us a heads up so we can look through that information? Does that make sense? As
Thank you,
opposed to,
Cody.
sorry, trying to navigate the whole.
No, that's perfect.
I was like, how do I
honestly,
get this out? Yeah,
That's a perfect
without
summary.
him having, because I don't know. Yeah, I'm trying to process it. That's why I keep getting.
Yeah.
In the meantime, could we maybe present the budget that we currently have at next meeting? You and I, like, see what money we actually have and see if there's anything we could do with the city events and things, or has it been taken from us already?
Yeah.
Okay,
Have it to the end.
we can talk through that. So.
Yeah.
However, regardless of the funding, I still think it would benefit us to figure out ways in which we can engage in those efforts.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, have we ever ambassador thing?
Could be. Could be, although that I think would be just something that could be formulated and presented just to the outreach.
Yeah.
It's going to look like going forward. Yeah. So
As a board, have we ever hosted a diversity fair or anything like that?
not anything like that per se, but we've had like a booth at Harvest Fest, which went away
We've
during
had
COVID, obviously.
we've had presences at various events, and sometimes it was kind of successful and sometimes it was not particularly.
Yeah, the one that I found to be pretty highly successful is when we worked to bring some artists at the most recent, well, it was at downtown. It was at
2019.
Yeah,
Harvest
it was right
Festival.
before everything
Yeah.
went to, crazy.
But
Harvest Fest is gone then.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was successful. But we had sponsored the artists that were coming in to do that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
whereas my experience with when we staffed a booth at Harvest Fest was that it was kind of not much of anything. No, it was, we were another booth.
And I think, after years of that, that was sort of y'all decided not to, that wasn't the best use of the time and energy.
We were able to get Braille locker numbers at the rec center.
Okay, yeah.
But that was not a Harvest Fest thing.
Well, it came out of that.
Did it?
It came out of a conversation.
So speaking of Braille, the municipal court has been updated with all of their signage, Spanish, English, Spanish, and Braille, and all ADA accessible. And City Hall is next on the list. We're working through that right now. We have bids for the signage, the cost to replace it all, and my partner in language access and I will be wandering the facility and trying to figure out the ins and outs of where things go and which signs we overlooked or need to add to the list. And
So that's just the kind of things we want, the city council representative to give us.
but he doesn't
He
know
wouldn't
that.
know
That's
that,
an
though.
operational
No, but-
decision.
Similar, whatever they're doing.
Oh.
Here's an update that says.
So English, Spanish, Braille, and ADA accessible. Does ADA accessible make sure that it include making sure that things have large fonts?
And it's the height of where it is.
Good.
So if I'm in a wheelchair, I can actually reach it or see it.
I'm just starting to notice how much a lot of things are in very small font and those eyes still work.
It gets worse.
I know.
I don't think it's that much
Better.
Well, I think there are some definite, I think one of the things that we can do, and I know there's been a shift at, libraries and parks, and I know Rich was somebody we worked with directly that we're not working with anymore, and maybe it's time to think about reestablishing that connection in whatever ways we can. Right? Yeah, I'll just say it that way.
Yeah, there's a backstory.
There's a Cody story, I
Isn't
know.
there, Cody?
No.
Well, Cody has information. So.
Things are moving and shaking.
Yeah, I get that. So, but I do think, to your point, let's leverage the resources we have.
Well, and then maybe it's not a city something, maybe it's something else, right?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Right?
Yeah.
Maybe we host a pancake breakfast somewhere, right? Or whatever.
Maybe we, yeah.
Yeah.
So everybody put your thinking caps on then.
Okay, all right. So we are getting close to time and I do want to honor everyone since I know you're also busy. Anything to report out in the community or anything that you would like to share with the board before we adjourn this evening? We'll start with screen. Donna, do you have anything? Jill, Doug?
My neighbor got married.
Congratulations. That's to your neighbor.
It was a lot of fun because we've been really lucky. He is my next door neighbor, and so we've known him for years since we bought the house. So we met his girlfriend, we met his bearded dragon. He's always been really great to my kid, and we ended up being way more involved in the wedding than like we heard he was getting married. And we were like, that's great. He was like, does your little one want to maybe be the flower girl? And we're like, yeah, cool. Then some time goes by and he's like, it's been so long since I had to plan a wedding. This is really hard. We have to find an officiant. And my husband's like, I can be the officiant. I'm cleared for that.
Oh my goodness.
So my husband officiated, my kid was the flower girl, and then 5 minutes before the ceremony starts, my husband comes and pulls me aside and is like, the mother of the bride was supposed to do a reading, but she's having like a breakdown and doesn't think she can get through it. Can you come up and read the poem during the vows? And I'm like, okay.
Congratulations.
So,
It sounds like it was as much your wedding as anyone else's.
it was very exciting. We all got involved. We all had a job, and then the wedding will be talked about for a long time. It was fun.
Oh, that's awesome.
I will say, in Colorado, you don't have to have an officiant.
You don't.
Couples can self-solemnize, which means.
I don't think either
learned
one of
that
them
too.
would have been articulate.
I don't like that term.
She didn't make it down the aisle before they were both bawling. It was beautiful.
Aw.
It just means that all the thing that matters is that the couple signs the license.
Yeah.
That's the thing that matters.
Although
We have friends who are
technically,
doing that.
technically, you do not have to sign a license to be legally married in Colorado.
Mhm.
That's true. You can just,
Present
Just
yourself as
present
being
yourself
married.
as married.
and after a while, you're common law married. Yep.
Or actually, you're that. No, yeah, right, I know. I resemble that.
Things that are happening in the community is, I believe, next Monday is Juneteenth,
Yes.
Yes, yes.
and it's Pride Month, so.
Yes, exactly.
City's doing cool stuff.
Yeah.
The proclamations, the city staff workforce, just so you all are aware of these things, we have an internal group that's made up of staff, does similar work to us. They just had Juneteenth on Tuesday. Yesterday was Tuesday. We brought in a facilitator who talked about Juneteenth and the history and the cultural and importance and all sorts of things. And really, it started a really great conversation. And that's then leaping into sort of a book club for those who are interested in reading one of the books that she recommended.
Very cool.
And then Pride, we have a Pride celebration tomorrow that will include a trainer who works in LGBTQ plus training. That's what he does, I think, for the University of Colorado. And I could have that wrong, could be UC Health. And then a comedian who's coming in for a little bit. And then they brought in booths. So all sorts of resources for the community will also be there. So just so you know, internally, a huge effort in that regard. And our equitable process coordinator who partners with me and all of those efforts will be at our next meeting to introduce himself to all of you.
Great.
Perfect, awesome. And then, is everybody aware of the Sheridan Green Elementary situation? No. Okay, I'm just making sure. So if it's just Seth, we can talk to you about it after. I just want to make sure everybody understands that the city is getting the elementary school back. And they are looking to repurpose it for reasons or whatever.
Okay.
That they hear from the community.
And there's a lot of.
And then also whatever cost and logistics and infrastructure needed to repurpose said.
Art Center.
And there are a lot of implications around the development in southeastern Westminster with our programs and projects and things. So, yeah, with that property specifically. So.
Yeah.
Good. Cool. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you all. Happy Pride.
I would like somebody to claim.
Oh,
the
yes.
Proclamation.
And what happens?
I got it.
Yeah, it was
Archive them somehow.
I don't know what I actually did.
Do they have a place that they put them? Or do they
You know,
just
people take them
get
home.
into a?
There's precious little wall space here at City Hall, which in the public spaces, which is very
So
interesting.
can you imagine the number of proclamations that would be
Yeah.
on these walls at the?
Come in your office.
I had a stack
you
of
can
them in
put
my
these in
office and
your
I think I gave them to the clerk the other day or a while back.
Yeah.
They're in public record. I don't know what our retention policy is. They're digital.
Should
So,
have gone to.
yeah. And most of the time people take them. Yeah, most of the people take them. So, yeah. If you know, and if you have connections to groups who would want them, are always welcome to take them and share them. We don't have to keep them. There's no.
Somebody should make art out of them.
Yeah, you know what? I was thinking,
Huh?
Somebody should make art out of them.
probably, I'd use them. I'd put them in the theater. Be like, there you go.
There you go. Cool.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, our students definitely need to see representation and
Yeah.
that the
Yeah.
community
Yeah.
values.
Fantastic.
Yeah, we'll
Thank you.
do that. So,
Yep, gives them a purpose.
thank you. All right, and we will officially at 7:30 on the button, by the way,
Nice.
adjourn. Thank you very much.
You're 30 seconds over.
Yeah, 30 seconds over. Sorry. You got your next time.
Yeah, right.
Thank you all.
Yep, thank you.
All right, I'll see you next time.
Bye now.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye-bye. When we see each other again, it will be officially summer.
Yeah.
Um,
You